Hello there, today I'm going to bring you a review of Sofia Khan is Not Obliged by Ayisha Malik. I have quite mixed feelings about this and it kind of disappointed me, so I wanted to get the points out there. It might be a bit spoilerific, but if you know that this is basically a Muslim version of Bridget Jones, you know what's going to happen, so it's not overly spoilerific, but if you don't want to know at all, please click off now. Basically, as I say, this is the Muslim version of Bridget Jones. Sofia Khan is a 30-year-old woman writing in a diary who has just left her potential fiancé Imran because he would not move out of the family home and she didn't want to move in with his parents, which is normal in the Muslim community. A wife is expected to move in with the partner and his parents. But Sofia Khan is a modern woman living in London. She doesn't want that, so she has left him, sworn off of men, and just decided to be single for the rest of her life. Sofia struggles in the same way that any woman who has just decided to be single forever struggles. Her family are very much, when are you getting married, when are you getting married? She works in a publishing house and she is talking about this in one of the morning meetings and the issues she's having, and the publisher decides that it sounds like an excellent idea for a book, a Muslim dating manual. So Sofia is employed to write this book, and basically this is her journey of writing that book. Obviously, though she has sworn off men, things happen. There are trials, tribulations and loves in here on her journey through the Muslim dating world. That said, I didn't like this book, but we'll get to that later. Firstly, what I did like about it. Sadly, I don't think it should be important to point out that Muslims are just people too. But obviously in this day and age, there's a lot of bad rep for Muslims and the Muslim community, which I just don't understand. But I think this book is important because it does sort of give you some understanding of the Muslim community and make it less of a unknown entity for a lot of people, I think. There was a scene in here where a man on the tube shouts, terrorist at Sofia, and she shouts back something like, and I'm not quoting here because I can't be bothered to look for it, but something like, oh, terrorists don't wear designer shoes, which is hilarious. Obviously, this deals with a lot of serious issues. There's a few incidences of racism in here, and it's shocking but true that that kind of thing does happen, obviously, every day. So in that sense, this book is very important. It's also very interesting. I mean, it looks a lot at the Muslim community. Sofia Khan is a hijabi, so she wears a scarf over her head. That's a personal opinion. Her family do not actually approve of it at all, which is interesting because you would think that in the Muslim community that's standard, that's something standard. But no, it's only a personal choice if you're very religious. Sofia Khan's family are obviously not religious, but she chooses to wear it, and constantly her mum is just saying, oh, you know, why do you wear it? Are you going to wear it at your wedding day? Why? Which was very interesting actually, because I wouldn't have expected that her family would have that issue with it. And there were a few incidences of things like that. Obviously it was quite interesting to know the Muslim traditions and things like that. So, that's the parts that were interesting, and it was laugh out loud funny. I'm not going to lie, there were some points that were laugh out loud funny. That's the parts that weren't so bad, and I think it's an important book for those parts, and I wouldn't put anybody off reading it because it is important in that way. However, now, up until the last chapter, I didn't have an issue with this book. It was going to be a 4-star read for me. I was going to rave about it. And then it got to the last section, and I didn't like what was happening. And I looked back at the book as a whole, and I thought about the characterisation, the relationships, etc. And I realised that it was just very lacking. I didn't like the general moral. I didn't like Sofia Khan. I think that was the main issue. I didn't like her. I realised she was just unpleasant throughout. She didn't develop, she didn't grow, she didn't learn from her mistakes. She was just unpleasant continually. And there were many things wrong with it. For me, the first issue that started niggling at me was the fact that this is obviously a spin-off from Bridget Jones. But to a certain extent, it was obvious that it was a spin-off. It didn't need to go to the lengths that it went to tell us this is Bridget Jones, this is Bridget Jones. Like, for example, Sofia Khan was always just randomly popping up with, need a fag. Need to lose some weight. And it didn't fit with the text even, and it was just a blatant attempt to tell the reader that this is a spin-off of Bridget Jones, but we already knew. We didn't need her to be like, need fag, or anything like that, because it was just too much on Bridget Jones' side. And also her friendship group I found very confusing. There were two friends, Saj and Foz, I think were their names. And obviously these are abbreviations. But to have two friends with very similar abbreviated names who do very similar things, it just got confusing. And throughout I didn't really know who was who with the friendship group thing. So there was that. On the other hand, there was also the issue that I had with Bridget Jones. As much as I love Bridget Jones and it's funny and I will watch the film any day, and I loved the books as well, there is the issue of the impression that a woman cannot be happy unless she finds a man to marry. This was less so in this book. It's more of an issue in Bridget Jones, but even though Sofia Khan has sworn off men and she's not interested, she's not looking for love, which is refreshing, ultimately she only finds happiness once she has found love, so obviously she was looking for it all along. Now, I do have an inbuilt problem with the idea that a woman can only be happy once she finds a man. It just bothers me. As I say, it bothered me in Bridget Jones, it bothered me in this. Also, Sofia Khan is just not a likeable person. She's very self-absorbed. She's constantly got this personal dialogue going on that means that she completely misses things, and that continues throughout. She doesn't learn her lesson. She doesn't stop having this personal dilemma that makes her miss all the important things going on around her. It just carries on. She carries on being self-absorbed. She carries on being selfish. She carries on making decisions with no real purpose, no real backing, just because she fancies it, and she irritated me and I didn't like her. Also, I think because of the Bridget Jones issue again, it was trying to be Bridget Jones, so obviously you had the sort of Daniel Cleaver type player who Bridget never really understood, or Sofia never really understood where she stood with him, and he would be all with her and all loving and charismatic, and then he'd suddenly answer the phone to another woman, and it just, I feel like he was put in there purely, again, for the Bridget Jones reason, and his character just wasn't very developed, and the relationship wasn't very developed, and it kind of just came to a very abrupt halt, without anything really coming of it, or of anything really happening with them. I feel like he was very much in there, again, as a prop for the Bridget Jones comparison. I think that's everything. I think that's all of my issues. Mainly, as I say, Sofia is not a pleasant person, and she misses a lot because of that, and I get that sometimes that's intentional, but I feel like there had to be some redemption there, and there wasn't, so meh. I would still say this is worth a read. I think a lot of people would enjoy this, and a lot of people would have good fun with it. Personally, I had big issues with it, but as I say, I didn't realise them until the end when I looked back on it as a whole. I enjoyed the experience of reading it when I was reading it, so I would still recommend it. Just be mindful that there are issues and it's not a perfect book at all. Bye.